Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood host of an audio series here. Hope you're having a nice day and a pretty good week. Let's jump right into installment number 8 with what's happening now. Sort of. Today's story entails an all too familiar entity that I've covered in a lot of these segments lately, and I think a lot of listeners would agree it would be great if they'd stop being a part of major news stories. I'm talking about the rash known as extremist militant groups, more commonly referred to as terrorists. Today's group is located in the continent of Africa. They're particularly a big problem in Nigeria, though they're also active in Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. Their name, you might ask? Boko Haram, though their official name is actually... it's really long and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but here goes. Jama'atu Ali's Sunnah Lida Await Wal Jihad, which translates to Group of the People of Sunnah for Preaching and Jihad. So basically they're extremists of the Islamic nature, and they've been causing havoc and conflict in the region since 2009. Though their roots go all the way back to its founding by Mohammed Yusuf in 2002. Why am I talking about them now specifically though? Well, before getting too far ahead of ourselves, let's look at what got us to this point first. So Boko Haram's early years after its founding entailed being a religious sect with a complex and school, where youths and followers who attended were taught of the group's political goal of creating an Islamic state. Golly, that sure sounds familiar. So the complex essentially served as a recruiting ground for jihadis. So around 2009, the police started investigating into the group and arrested members of Boko Haram, and they also confiscated weapons and bomb-making equipment. So it's obvious these guys were extremists. So in retaliation, clashes and riots sparked between members of the group and the police, and about 700 people died by late July of 2009. And not to mention there was also a bunch of property damage which occurred, and they damaged a bunch of public establishments in the country of Nigeria. Though the police did manage to capture the founder of the group, Yusuf, and he was killed while in custody. Unfortunately, as is the case with a lot of extremist groups, killing the leader has unintended consequences, and in this instance, it only emboldened the group further. So, for years, Boko Haram was active in an ongoing conflict with Nigeria, going inside the country, and it was also occurring in neighboring countries. But Western nations in NATO seem to have had other, let's say, more pressing concerns with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and later other groups in the Middle East. However, the group finally started to get the attention, mostly negative attention in the form of disdain from the rest of the world, after it abducted 276 schoolgirls in Nigeria. And this occurred back in April of 2014. And you might remember a Twitter campaign to raise awareness of the kidnapping from back then. It was called #BringBackOurGirls. Regardless, and this is extremely unfortunate, Boko Haram did not release the kidnapped girls and instead announced they had been married off, most likely without their consent. So yeah, all that talk about raising awareness didn't exactly yield many direct results of intervention into the situation. And the Nigerian government's response to the crisis was, let's just say, very sloppy. They essentially said they had negotiated the return of the girls with Boko Haram, but they didn't. Since then, things have only gotten worse. 2014 was actually a year where the group killed more than 2/5 of the total number of civilians that they've been responsible for killing since the clashes began in 2009. So in other words, they're becoming a bigger problem, not a smaller problem. The worrisome trend, though, is that Boko Haram has started to imitate another terrorist group, one that is currently viewed as a major threat, and I'm of course talking about the group I've referenced in passing throughout this story, the Islamic State. From the damn flag they use to now the level of sophistication used in their videos, there has actually been speculation that Boko Haram may be trying to establish a formal alliance with the Islamic State, or maybe even Al-Qaeda, which would be dreadful. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm as skeptical of the effectiveness of Western intervention in combating extremists in other parts of the world as anyone else. But it's becoming really obvious, at least in the case of Boko Haram, that doing nothing is not helping make things any better. That isn't to say the regional governments aren't partly to blame. They should definitely be stepping up their efforts to combat these type of groups. But this is just getting ridiculous. If you'd like to find out more about this horrible extremist faction and why nations of the world should collectively be doing more to put an end to them, I encourage you to check out the links in the description. Okay, enough with the gloom and doom, and instead let's get into the subject of things that really peeve me off at times. Let's talk, Internet. Now, today's subject is about something that I must admit I really dislike, mostly because it's not a very nice thing to experience. I'm talking about hackers, specifically black hat hackers, and they are a type of hacker who essentially violate a computer's security for little reason aside from just causing people torment or for their own personal gain. And in a way, though, I guess this segment can also apply to cyber terrorism. But in case you're unfamiliar with the term, hacking, when it's done by these folks, is essentially the online equivalent of a home invasion. The target's privacy is violated, they'll start to question their security measures, and depending on the situation, it might cause some serious damage to their daily life or activities. I know I'm on the internet, and by speaking up about this type of stuff, I might be making myself a target for folks who engage in doing this. Right now, I'm actually kind of just banking on the fact that I'm a small fry in comparison to the massive ocean that is the internet, or even just the YouTube community. But even if I'm afraid of some form of retribution, I do feel I should speak up about how this sort of thing can negatively impact the internet experience of a user. I know there are bad people out there who might just be doing this sort of thing because they can or they want to hurt people. But if I might try to appeal to them in a genuine heart-to-heart nature, I would say, please don't do it. It's not a nice thing to do, and on the metaphorical playground that is the internet as a whole, you're acting like the bullies. So please, don't. Phew. Alright. So then, let's discuss literature in the all-too-familiar segment. Here's a recommendation. Today's recommendation is a short story written by an author I have mentioned previously, all the way back in my first installment of the series actually, by the name of William Sidney Porter, though his pen name was O. Henry. This story is called A Retrieve Reformation, once again by O. Henry, and it's about a notorious bank vault cracker by the name of Jimmy Valentine, who after spending years in prison and serving his time, is finally released. Following his release, Valentine seems to pick up right where he left off in cracking safes and stealing, which draws the attention of the authorities, of course, but more specifically, the ire of the investigator who initially tracked him down and put him away in prison in the first place. However, Jimmy Valentine, while visiting the next city he intends to target, gets a glimpse of a lovely lady who is of the wealthy and sophisticated nature, and he falls in love. Can he change his criminal ways and become a respectable citizen to gain the affection of this lady, or will his past catch up to him? The story entails themes such as the power of love, whether people can really change their ways, and the importance of a second chance to make things right. I definitely encourage you to check out the story. Links in the description. And with that, I think it's safe to call this one just about done. Before I go, of course, as this is the last week of February, I do believe I owe a certain former lady of interest a shout out. So, this one's for you, Addie. Hope you're well. Have a great week, everyone.
You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful.